begin with this question which many people will pose to themselves as to what is yoga or supermind to do with collective life? How is Sri Aurobindo's vision of life and reality connected with collective life? Why should it have anything to do with collective life? That is one question. And it has a relevance in the sense that he has given a new vision of man's life on earth. And in that vision, he sees the possibility not only of recreating and transforming the whole life, but he sees also the possibility that all forms of life that are manifested, individual life as well as collective life, they all come under this new program. What is going to be the transformation or change necessary in the collective life? If life divine is the fulfillment of man on earth, by rising to a supramental consciousness and bringing it down into himself, the same question will apply also to the collective life. That what would be the result, or what would be the consequences, or what would be the form of the collective life if, or you can say, whether supermind or truth consciousness is at all intended to be embodied in a collectivity or not. You see? If it is not, then we should knock out the possibility from now and say it is not possible. But if it is, then it is a part of the whole program which Aurobindo has set before mankind, realization of life divine on earth. And life will include individual and collective life. Therefore, collective life naturally comes under the program which he has put down for humanity. The program is of inner change, but the inner change will necessarily involve great outer changes. Changes in the outer form of life, changes in the individual and collective molds of life. And that is where we are concerned as to how, when supramental consciousness would be contacted or would work, or as it is already working, what inner changes would be necessary in the individual and collective life. And if the changes take place, what is likely to be the form of the changes? Well, that problem he has dealt with in two books, Ideal of Human Unity and Human Cycle. There you find in these two books his conception where he applies this vision of truth consciousness to collective life and shows that his conclusion, collective life also must undergo a radical change in its basis. Well, he tries to substantiate it by study of man's evolution from social small units to present state, and from the tendencies that are working, the psychological factors that are working now. He shows that the inevitable consequence must be to take a turn from the rational age through which we are passing. The rational age has reached its peak, so to say, and it must now turn back upon something else than reason. Well, that is how, roughly, you can feel the way in which he has put the thesis for our consideration, that reason having reached its limit in, well, organizing life and giving man the truths about individual and collective life, it is finding that it is in a blind alley now. And the curve of reason must take now another turn towards either something else than reason or something greater than reason. And that something greater than reason he has already worked out in life divine as the truth consciousness. Well, it is that which must now come to, well, reconstitute man's individual and collective life. And what would be the form if it reconstituted man's individual and collective life? They are the problems in Ideal of Human Unity and Human Cycle. Well, and because otherwise life divine and its thesis would remain only a philosophical abstraction and not something that you can apply to life. And the whole basis of the work is that it should apply to life. And one proof that this vision or this view of man's collective life connected with the growth of man's collective consciousness can be seen in its actual application, in the postscript chapter which he wrote to his book, Ideal of Human Unity, a last chapter was added to bring it up to date. The book was written 40 years back. And it was, even before the First World War, I think practically the subject had begun. But by the end of the First World War, the book was already finished and printed, Ideal of Human Unity. Second World War intervened, and when the edition was being thought of, the second edition, then he was asked to allow the publication, and he was not willing. He said that much change has taken place, and the situation has so much changed that many things which I wrote would have to be rewritten. Instead of taking the whole labor of rewriting, he added a postscript chapter at the end of the book to bring the book up to date. And in that postscript chapter, you find two things which the modern politicians have now found true. That was written in 1949. He said coexistence is quite possible. That was in 1949. In fact, I can tell you that coexistence is a word first used by Aurobindo in that book, 1949. That two different systems of social, constitution or social reconstruction can exist side by side. There is no reason why one system alone should prevail and the other should always come to fight with it or in conflict with it. Coexistence is quite possible. Two ideologies of social reconstruction can exist side by side and see in what way they are working out and what are the results to the human collectivity. There is no reason to suppose that only one should exist. That is one. And second thing he predicted was the aggression of China on India, Tibet, and other countries. I will cite the passages afterwards. You see, in the postscript chapter, at that time it was that India was visited by Chow and Lai. And, they were shouting about the brotherhood between China and India in the streets of Delhi. It was then that he said that Chinese aggression would be a great possibility and was the looming danger. And that was in 49. So I'm pointing out that the reading of the trends of collective life is quite capable of giving possibilities and also giving trends which can be beacon lights on the way to man's fulfillment of collective life. This is not as it were an abstract vision which has nothing to do with active dynamic movements of world forces which are molding the events of international life today. This thing I refer to just to show that this vision has a relevance to a dynamic movement which is molding the life of collective consciousness of man today. His vision group includes not only the individual consciousness but the collective consciousness. And because collectivity is a part of that divine consciousness, the truth consciousness which is working. The collectivity is not outside. And it has to attain its own perfection. In fact, philosophically, it will move to a position of one to many. I think you should have a representation, otherwise it will lack. The idea of the one becoming the many, is it not? That is the idea. That is the one basis with which we are starting. The one becomes many, and that is in the Superman, they are one. In the Superman consciousness, one and many coexist without losing their identity or unity or oneness. This is here. And that is the course of manifestation is broken up. Now, the one does not become individuated many. Individual many, no. The one becomes first. You see, the collective many and the collective many, each one breaks up into individuation. You see, the individual is afterwards created. Individuality. So this is the middle term, which is a collective. The one first projects itself into a collectivity, into a collective consciousness, cosmic consciousness or universal consciousness. And in the universal, there are many wholes or many groups that are included. And then in each group, you have the individuation. In each group you have then the individuation. So the movement from one to the many becomes here. First you have the many individuals, but here you have many groups, many collectivities, you see. So that is the one thing to be noticed, that when we speak of the one and many, we forget that the philosophical transition is, from his point of view, the transcendent, the universal, and the individual. That is, these are the three terms of the supreme consciousness. I mean, the ultimate supreme truth stands at 3 points or 3 positions, takes up 3 positions. So far as the material world or our universe is concerned, it is transcendental, it's universal and individual. One and the same truth, it's an identity, you see. So this universal term it is, which is the responsible for collective life. It is the universal which manifests itself as a collectivity, groups. And all the groups make up again one. You see, that is how humanity, composed of many nation units, is now driving towards the unity of mankind. It is not that individual nation units will be dissolved or that they have no utility of their own. You understand, the idea is that the many groups must come together to make the whole. Each culture, each racial entity, racial collectivity is a soul. Now this was not known 50 years back perhaps, or last century. They never thought, because politics was moving in those days, you know. In old times, group life was only subject of the politician, is it not? And the politician was a statesman or a diplomat or a Machiavelli or whatever he was, you see, and there was no room for any principle there, any morality there, any idealism in politics. Politics was subjected to utility, to necessity, if you like, or to need, balance of force, you see, to opportunism, to a sort of compromise all the time. In fact, agreements were never respected except when they were to be respected because of force and power, is it not? Otherwise they will say a treaty is a scrap of paper, is it not? That's what they said. Yes, that's it. That was a place of honesty, morality, and idealism in politics once upon a time, isn't it? Yes. So, well, they always said like that. There was no question of scruples in politics, is it not? You could be very unscrupulous. And the more unscrupulous you are, the better politician or a diplomat. That was once upon a time the idea. Now that has to go. That has got to go, and it is going. But what I mean is that power was the only thing that was supposed to act in politics. No other consideration was allowed to come and influence policy except power, force, necessity, need of combination, need of balance, need of compromise, or need of meeting a situation. Well, that is how it was. Now, it is felt that you may have your political need and your political ideas, but nations have their soul. Soul of a race, soul of a nation has now become, something which you cannot simply brush off by saying we don't care. You will have to. You see, that is yes. He is showing that these groups that are evolving are not unconscious entities. They are conscious operation of a collective consciousness. Humanity as a whole is one conscious entity, of which each group is a personality, a projection, you see. So that group life is, well, charged by or made alive by a living collective entity. That is what we find also illustrated in history. You see a nation that has already become a nation, if it has arrived at the nation stage, it is very difficult to dismiss the nation or to disintegrate it completely or destroy it completely. Even if political freedom is taken away, the nation persists and gets back its freedom. How many times was Poland partitioned? not less than 3 times, as we know. You see, the partition of Poland took place 3 times. Russia did it first, Napoleon did it second time, isn't it? And the Allies did it third time, the last war. And yet Poland persists. You couldn't kill Poland. Ireland was occupied by England for 300 years, but Ireland didn't cease to exist. It insisted on its existence and came to life, came to live. So did India. A nation might lose its freedom, but doesn't lose its soul if it has become a nation. Nation has a soul which can persist in spite of difficulties. That shows that there is an entity supporting the collective, movement of group life of man. This looks strange, but when we come to the metaphysical portion, we shall see that this is more than amply supported by evidence of nature and history. You see, that collective life is not merely a mechanical movement brought together by people interested in life, or interested in money, or interested in economy, or interested in self-defense, or interested in, gaining power. It's not merely coming together of accidental or, a chance coming together of people inspired by one interest. No. It is coming together of people who are realizing a psychological entity behind their collective existence. Collective existence is a psychological expression. It is not at present the expression of the soul, just as in the individual, the psychic being is not expressing itself. It is vital being or impulse or desire that is now expressing. But behind it we feel and we know that there is a true soul. But just the same way in the collective life also, the soul of the collectivity is not able to make itself felt in the normal, operations of collective life. It is only in crisis that you find the soul is able to come out and make itself felt, you see. That is what I pointed out the other day in another context, that England, when the crisis came, had to rise to her collective soul and feel that the first thing to be attained in the World War was not setting right of frontiers of different nations violated by Germany, but it was restoration of human right. Freedom of thought and freedom of association, freedom of man. Just as quite the other thing for which the war seemed to have started, you see. But that was the coming in of the soul of the race, you see, trying to raise it to its inmost, nearest to its psychological, entity or soul. Well, that is how, if a nation obeys that soul impulse, it emerges progressive in the march of collective life generally. Well, I was telling you about the politician trying to think that this collective life was only his own field, but now he finds that after the two world wars, when science increased the capacity of giving unlimited power to collectivities, they found that each one going on adding each collectivity was adding only force and power to itself, and then it thought it would be only mutual self-destruction or mutual destruction it would come to. So the politician had to admit or find his own limitations. The Machiavelli couldn't go all the time and say, no, we can do what we like, because now the other fellow also can do what he likes. And then two people trying to do what they like is only mutual destruction. There can't be anything else. That is why other elements now, after the progress of science and destructive power given to man, the politician's role had to be limited, in the sense that he had to admit other values, that there must be other ways of setting right conflicts, differences, or points of, opposition must be resolved by some other way than only using military force, you see. Well, that has slowly opened out a way, and the way to settle problems and differences and even conflicts and oppositions has now opened a way for idealistic and ethical forces in international life. That is taking man nearer to his inner soul, even in the movement of his collective life. You see, till now the movement was governed by vital consideration of how much power one has, force. This was the decisive factor. Slowly, in collective life also, other inner factors begin to come to the front. Yes, whether you are right in what you are doing, whether other man has not also his own point of view, which might also be right from his point of view. You see, now that has come to that my point of view, I will enforce whether you like it or not. Well, now, if that comes to that, then both can use the same means, and then both can destroy each other. So instead of doing that, well, now the idea is how to find out a way in which you try to see, yes, I am right from my point of view, the other is right from his point of view, and now can we arrive at some understanding? You see, that's the point. Instead of resorting to force, so that conciliation, compromise, or introduction of ethical forces or principles has become now an active factor in collective life. And this was greatly supported by the political movement of India, you see, because India resorted to an ethical value to secure her freedom. You see, the pursuit of non-violence as a policy for 25 years by the greatest political party of India, the Congress, you see, is a historical fact. And it is that which has brought this progress of international life to prominence. That problem could be solved if you can insist on higher values and organize collective life to give practical expression to ethical values, not merely to avow or to declare or to affirm, but to make it living. If we can persuade collectivities or group life to accept actively and dynamically ethical values and act in solving collective problems, it is possible to arrive at some solutions. It's not to arrive at perfection, but certainly they are quite capable of solving problems. They may not create perfection, you see. It's not that it will be perfect, but methods other than military and use of power and force are available to man if he can organize the group life and center it around a moral, economic, or idealistic value and make that value active in man's life, not merely profess. If man can be made to risk, take up risks to change collective life by living actively the moral values in his own collective life, then the problems of difference, opposition, or conflict could be attempted, and so a solution could be attempted, and it's possible to arrive at a solution. Well, that is what the contribution of India amounts to. Now, we were thinking of this group life in connection with this development. Well, I would like to point out the metaphysical part first before we go into detail. You see? Yes, that's better. The idea that collectivity is something living, I don't know whether it has found expression in other cultures and in what way, but in Indian literature, this has found a very definite and clear expression right from the Vedic times. The Veda speaks of the individual and the collective life, not for exposing the detail of collective life in its consciousness. No, it is only trying to show that the collective consciousness also is divine. That's how it speaks of it. You see, the Purusha, the subjective self, the Purusha of the cosmos, the Purusha of the individual. And there is a sukta in the Rig Veda, 10th Mandal, 90th. In the 10th mandal of the Rig Veda, 90th hymn gives you the body of the prayer which the Rigvedic rishis, you see, have given voice to. The prayer reads something like that. Sahasra Shirsha Purusha Sahasraksha Sahasrapas Sabhumim Vishwato Vrutva Atyatishtat Dashangulam. This is from the Ved. It says, the collective being, thousand-headed, Sahasra is 1,000-headed, Purusha, 1,000 visions, means with thousands of eyes, with thousands of feet, he having englobed the earth on all sides, remained over 10 finger measures. He englobed the whole earth and was more than the earth, you see. That's the description of the collective self. Collective self or collective being is, yes, I think Shakespeare speaks of its many-headed monster, is it not? O thou many-headed monster, who would like to be thy king? That's in one of the riots which takes place in Shakespeare's drama. Well, this many-headed monster is a lower aspect of this collective being. I mean, the lower vital aspect in which it loses its head and can be destructive. A group or a crowd, when it is, subjected to irrational movement, can become very destructive, which is a many-headed monster. But it can be also thousand-headed divine. Well, that is exactly what the Rig Veda says here. The thousand-headed divine, who, englobing and immanent, having pervaded the whole earth, remains over. He is not exhausted by, pervading inside. He is more, because he is transcendent. We have taken the position, you see, the transcendent, the universal and the individual. And then the third verse of the same hymn says, Etavanasya mahima atah jayancha purushaha padosya vishwani bhutani trivadasyam rutam divi. This is one of the, I think, the most significant verse, hymn in the Rig Veda, in one sense, that it says all this universe is his glory. Whatever you see is the glory of the Sahasrara, thousand-headed Purusha, is his glory. But he is greater than that which you see. You see, he is greater than that which you see, but what you see is his glory. One. All these beings and worlds are only 1/4 of him. 3/4 of him is situated in the immortal heaven. 1/4 has manifested, 3/4 has not yet manifested. Now this gives you an idea of the further possibility of the cosmic Purusha, the universal soul, possibly manifesting some other, unmanifested portion of himself. That is what I refer to as manifested universe and potential universe. Remember, he says that 1/4 is manifested, 3/4 is above, which is not yet manifested. Well, I am giving you the most literal translation that is imaginable, not at all adding any significance or any interpretation at all, literal. You see, tripad means third, 3/4, you see, and pad means 1/4. So 1/4 is here, Vishwani Bhusva, all these creatures make up 1/4. And 3/4 is in the immortal heaven. So only what is manifested is very small portion of the cosmic Purusha. The universe is not the whole of his being. The Dashangulam, from the human point of view, and from the Purusha's point of view, it is only 3/4. What remains over is 3/4. It is in heaven, it is immortal, it is a greater portion of him that is potential and can manifest here, it means. Then, Tripad Urdhva Udaitat Purusha Pado Syeha Bhavat Punaha Tatah Vishwang Vyakramat Sashana Asane Abhi. The 3/4 that is above the universe, he arose and entered this 1/4 here. The 3/4 that is not manifested arose and entered this 1/4 here that we see. From there, means from the 1/4, he ascended all round. He ascended again all round, having put himself in hunger and non-hunger, in the living and the non-living. Manifesting himself in forms of light, he, again tries to go back to the heaven of immortality. In the third 191, another hymn, there is also a reference to collective life. It is very often repeated in prayers when people meet and sit together. number of people when they, in a temple or in a place or in a place where they gather together, that is very often repeated by the old people, Orthodox people. Sangachadvam samvadadvam samvo manamsi janatam deva bhagam yatha purve sanjanana upasate. Let us march upward together. Samgachadvam. Let us go together. Let us speak the common word, the agreed word. Samvo manamsi janatam. Let us know our mutual minds. Let our mind come into mutual understanding. Even the gods accept their portion being of mutually knowing minds. When mutually knowing minds offer their portion, then even the gods accept what is offered. A collective offering is easily acceptable to the gods. Samanu mantraha, let there be a common word of inspiration. Samiti samani, the attainment also let it be common. Samanam manaha, let us have a common mentality, a common mind. Sahachittam esham, let the consciousness also become one, sympathetic and known to each other. Samanam mantram abhimantraye vaha, and I am calling you, he says, to this ceremony in order to participate in the common formula that we have evolved. Sama nena vo havisha juhomi. And this which I offer here in the sacrifice is our common offering. It is a prayer of collective life, and it's, feeling that even spiritual progress would be helped if a collective will was brought to bear upon it. If individual also always can do it, but if a collectivity does it, it makes the task more easy. This is one of the oldest expression of this collective entity, and it brings into prominence that there is a consciousness that is behind the collective expression that we see in life. Now, this problem of our philosophical problem has to be tackled on the basis of the philosophy which we have seen up to now. One and many we have seen already in some aspect now, and this does not suddenly, as I told you, this one does not become individuated, many, but it becomes collective, you see. And in passing to the collectivity, it becomes then the individual. The individual comes here, and if you observe the growth from the inconscient is inert and therefore material. You call it matter if you like. You see, the inconscient is. It gives rise to life. And when life evolves, life takes 3 or 4 ways of its development. In one way you can say that this life, in life you find vegetable group, the animal group, the human group. And in each one you will find, in each inconscient having given rise to life, and life takes more and more evolves, more and more complex formations of its own. And in each one, now, you find, you can say, genus and species, put it roughly. Genus and species. And then individual. Genus, species and individual, is it not? Now you come to vegetable kingdom, yes. You will find it there in the vegetable kingdom. Genus, species and the individual. Vertebrals, you see the mammals, then species, then individual in the species, is it not? So in the animal kingdom also you find the same thing. In the animal kingdom also you find the group or the genus and species, the same Division obtains there also, an individual. Then when you come to the human being, you find also, yes, collectivity, a movement of collectivity and movement of individuality. In the human, individual and collective, the two. Now, another way of putting the same thing, if you want to put it a little differently to understand it a little better, from the one you get the group soul, and group soul to the individual, and the individual, now this individual is manifested in life. What we find in the plane of our life is individual moving towards collective life. Evolution of collective life. And this collective life is moving towards unity. Now if you watch carefully, it will be the one, many, individual, collective, unity again. You see, the one who is infinite becomes multiple here as individuals. This multiple individuality here. This multiple individuality is trying to get at the unity by collectivities which are brought together here. You see, the collectivities. And this collectivity is moving towards the unity. Going back to the same unity from which the one started, you see. The one goes back to again through passing through the... So life creates in man, especially on the human level, life seems to create the individual and the collective, two together. And individual and collective act and react upon each other till the individual organizes and the collective also meets a greater and greater unit. Ultimately, at last, practically realizing the human unity as the step so that the one has realized the largest possible unity realizable on earth. And it's a movement toward that unity again. The one becoming groups, groups giving rise to individual, and in the human individual, the individual becomes completely so cut off from everything else that he can directly contact the Supreme Consciousness, the One Consciousness. And then as he marches forward, he organizes greater and greater units of collective life in his historical development of society and nations. And now nation is the realized unit of man's growth toward this collectivity. Nation has not come all at once. The nation is a result of slow growth. The steps of growth we will see afterwards. We are just seeing from the philosophical point of view how, from the point of view of life divine, working of one omnipotent reality. You see, an omnipotent reality working in the world, omnipresent working in the world. How does it happen to create groups, individuals, an individual again organizing greater and greater rising groups till man has realized now the nation unit. This group life is not for the first time in man, because you see in the animals, you take the ants or you take the bees. Now there is already the organization of collective life there. In the vegetable kingdom, the orders are fixed, and each order has its common characteristics. And in each order again, each tree can be individuated completely by its form, by its leaves, by its flowers, by its size, by everything else. You can identify an individual tree belonging to one order. And the order has got common characteristics or common qualities. Well, in the animals, the ants and the bees or the herd, well, have got a collective group life. And more surprising part of it is that this has a soul, which seems to be instinctive, of course. It is not active or intellectually, conscious soul, but there is an instinctive soul there. How does an ant or a bee know what it has to do in the collective life, isn't it? Or in the herd itself, you will see that the herd is moved by a collective entity. It is as it were the group knows. The group life is conscious. It is guided by an instinctive soul. A psychological element is present. And when Cherno says that nations have got a soul of their own, he is supported by plenty of evidence in nature that groups that are not human have got a collective entity, an instinctive soul that seems to support a beehive or an anthill or, the movement of a herd. It seems to be guided as if the group knows. Group soul is there which is guiding the individuals who are functioning to fulfill separate parts. The fighters in the, anthill know that they have to fight. And the group soul is supporting them, so to say. And the other laborers know that they have only to labor. So you see, you understand the division of labor there operates spontaneously without any intervention of conscious intelligence or mind. But here, it is as it were, the instinctive soul was present. And it's the soul that is guiding the group life. Of course, groups again have their conflicts and so on. The law of conflicts operates there also. But the fact remains that the genus, the species, and again going back from evolved individuality, a mental, vital, and physical ego, again organizing collective life from small units to a greater and greater rising units. It began with the family. Most probably the human unit of collective life might have begun with the family. Then must have been the clan or the tribe. Then must have gone to a further stage, between the nation and the clan and the tribe, several clans and several tribes, subscribing to common values of life, having common ideas about religion or social life or behavior or standards of conduct. Many tribes and clans might have come together, and ultimately the nation unit was formed. And in this process, it was not as if step by step, it was a happy movement, in which there were no difficulties. Whenever nature met with difficulties, she didn't care. She crushed the small nations, she destroyed people, wars were there, empires were established, cruelties were done, and military force was used. But this inner entity was brought into existence. There is no doubt that nation unit has slowly evolved from the family unit by gradually, movement of collective life with conflict, with fight, with slow evolution, with coming of great leaders, spiritual leaders, religious leaders. All their action has tended to create greater and greater units of collective life in mankind. Till now, nation is the steady, accomplished unit of collective life. It is now something that lasts and that is going to last. And it is waiting for the further realization of its progress towards a greater unity, the unity of mankind. You see, the nation unit has to progress still further because it is human unity. Nations are not ultimate units in that sense. Ultimately, nation has also to make room for the whole of humanity, human unity. Well, we are seeing this process from the point of view of his metaphysical outlook, in which the one supreme consciousness and omnipresent reality being admitted, the omnipresent reality organizes itself first, as he said in Life Divine, that collective consciousness is before the individual. The individual mind did not create the earth. Yes, the earth was created by cosmic mind. And so the cosmic entity precedes the intellectual or conscious individual. And conscious individual is therefore only a term of the collectivity. It's only one individual among the group in which the thing is working. Now the progress from nation to the humanity is the next step for the further realization of unity in terms of completely divided individuals. You see, individual when he's made conscious of his individual center as a separate mind, separate life, and separate body, well, he has the possibility of complete isolation. And from that complete position of isolation, he is marching, creating greater and greater units of collective life, till he identifies or he comes to a point where he will be one with the whole of humanity. Well, that is exactly where it is coming to, is it not? That is what it is coming to. Yes, that's right. Yes, growth is from smaller to larger units. And again, in this growth, the most remarkable thing is that a psychological movement is taking place. The whole problem, in fact, of today is how to turn organized political unit into a psychological entity. An organized, effective economic and political unity, how to turn it into a psychological entity or psychological being, how to center it or bring into action the true psychological part. Yes, because in the beginning, if you take, when the groups were very small, the idea only was of survival. They wanted somehow to live. And so one group either opposed or combined with the another group in order to survive against animals. And then against each other. You see, it is still taking place in Africa. In Africa, the groups of the tribes have not arrived at nation consciousness, you see. Their difficulty is that suddenly now this whole nation unit is dropped on them from the top. And they can't adjust themselves because they are living in that tribal consciousness in which the tribal entity and tribal consciousness seems to be very strong and against each other, so to say. They are fighting against each other and not able to understand that they can formulate a nation, because that soul has to be evolved slowly from below. And they had no time to adjust. Suddenly this, after the Second World War, the principle of self-determination being accepted as a necessary part of all international life, self-determination was given to them. And then they said that self-determination means you must become a nation. Well, they can't become a nation all of a sudden. That's the trouble. The one tribe says, yes, we will become a nation, but we will rule. And the other tribe says, we have been always fighting, so we'll fight. And that is the whole trouble there. The nation or unit has not come to the surface by a slow process of growth or organization. It has come from the top. And the tribal consciousness finds it very difficult to adjust itself to the working of a unity of nationhood. They find it hard. And many Asian nations, I think, would certainly find it not easy. In fact, some of them have to go back, as you see in Iraq, or in Egypt's military dictatorship, or in Pakistan, you see, because they try first of all to work on the basis of collective consciousness of nation, and they find that the groups that are constituting the nation are not capable of acting effectively or correctly and reacting to the collective consciousness. So somebody who believes that he can do the best takes up the power in his hand and tries to run the whole show. The consciousness doesn't grow there, you see the whole difficulty. So survival is not the point. The growth has been taking place not only from small units to larger units, family to clan and tribe and nation, but each collectivity has contributed or has tried several times in its growth, from city republics of Greece right up to the Roman Empire. Values have been tried, psychological values. They tried to govern collective life by religion. Collective life in its growth did not grow only from smaller to larger units. It grew also in acquiring experience of trying higher and higher values. A time was when religion was the governing force of collective life, and they found it doesn't work. A time came when some other thing was put in its place and tried. It didn't work. Aesthetics was tried, reason was tried, intellect, philosophy was tried. Each one was found wanting. Till now, practical reason, application of science to life has now come to the top. And that is a governing force of collective life, psychological. This is the psychological aspect of the growth. Two aspects you must keep in mind. One, the physical aspect in which the political entity goes on growing into larger and larger number. And then the governing power which the collective life organizes or brings to the front by its growth into values of life or growth into culture. You see, collective life when it grows, it produces culture. Culture is a result of not of one man but of collective life. And these cultural values have been tried in collective life. So as to find what would be the highest standard or highest value which must be embodied in collective life. What would answer to the need of collectivity? Would religion answer? It did sometime, then it didn't. Then would philosophy answer? Would art answer? You understand? Well, would reason answer? Now people think reason can answer. Today now, after 150 years of rationality, it is being found that reason at its limits. And that if reason continues to govern collective life as the highest value, highest attainment of man, then it will be a movement in a circle. It will not be any issue out of it. It won't be able to lead men to anything more. It will only be a circle and you will have to go round and round. Well, that is the discovery which man is making slowly by applying reason not only to his individual life but to collective life. He is finding out that this doesn't seem to lead to anything. It will only lead to a movement in a circle. You can increase the radius of the circle, but you will not get out of this circular movement. It will be there all the time. That's several... along the two lines, there is a political, social and economic and cultural. You see, political, social, economic is one side and cultural side is another side. In the West, the development of the group life, centers around politico-economic, basis. Whereas in Asian countries, it is social and religious, social-religious. In the West, the development of the group life, centers around politico-economic, basis. Whereas in Asian countries, it is social and religious, social-religious. The emphasis in the organization of Western collectivity is politico-social or politico-economical, you see. The stress on the Asian collectivities that grew, is social-religious, you see. And they also had their economics. I don't say no collectivity can exist without economics. In fact, East was very rich economically. So rich that the West was tempted to go and try to get money from there, is it not? I mean, that is what Milton wrote in his Paradise Lost, where is it? Wealth of Ormuz and of Ind, where the East showers on her king barbaric pearl and gold. You see, wealth of Ormuz and of Ind was proverbial. Ormuz is Persia and Ind is India. You see, wealth of Hormuz and Ind was famous in Milton's time. That's why they went to India. They didn't go for nothing. They didn't go for a change, no. They didn't go for only have a walk over and come down. The attraction of money, yes, it is a wealth. So that they had their wealth. What I am pointing out is that the Eastern countries were not poor as they are now at that time. Certainly they were at the acme of their material prosperity, so much prosperous that the people of the West, who were at that time backward, thought that these were most advanced countries, you see. And it was called these islands are called, the Dutch and the Belgians, And they amassed a lot of money because of this, the, the provision, the cinnamon and cardamom and this, spice, yes, you see, the spices. So these were the islands where you could go and get money, you see, that was the idea. And the Arabs also earned a lot in commission. You see, Arab carried a lot of communication between East and West. They were the intermediaries, they were the agents, you see, really speaking. Venice was then the agent after the Arabs, you see. It passed off from the eastern hand to the western hand slowly. The agency. Agents means you're carrying the goods from one to the other and establishing a commercial relation between the two. And as the scientific progress increased and the naval power came more and more centralized into western hands, the Arabs lost their control of the eastern seas. Otherwise, the Arabs had the control in the sense that they used to waylay and, they used to rob all the ships that were there. They were the pirates, you see. And so they were given the charge. And so from east, they brought things to the west. And the spices and so on, that was regarded as one of the very rich materials to deal with. Cloth from India, and very fine cloth, which England had to prohibit by introducing 300% of duty. I am talking from English statistics. English government and parliament passing a law of introducing 300% on Indian fabrics of cotton. They were so fine that the whole dhoti could be put in one ring. We put it round like that in a small hole of it. And when you take it out, it's 3 yards by 1.5. Well, that was. It was demonstrated to how they used to do it. They've lost that art. Now you've got better machines and you do it quickly, perhaps, I don't doubt. You do it far better. But the way they did it was terrific. They had holes made in the nail. Holes made in the nail, and the thread was passed through the holes in the nail. And the manipulation was by the thumbs. And so the agents of East India Company, in order to prevent this product of Dhaka muslin, it was called muslin of Dhaka, you see, they cut off their thread, their toes, you see that. Yes. And still there were people who produced, so 300% of duty was put upon it so that the mills may begin their work, you see, otherwise they would never start. Well, but that is a chapter. I am only pointing out that there was a time when East had its own industry and prosperity. And it lost it because it lost political cohesion, unity of life, and capacity to organize collective life, and many weak points. But so far as material prosperity was concerned, they had that time. As each nation has its own time, there is nothing wrong in it. Now, this organization is not only along political and economic lines, but it took this socio-religious form. And in certain countries like India, it also stressed the spiritual basis, not merely religious but spiritual basis. And they stressed this spiritual value to the extent that it dominated the whole of collective life for long period of their history. In other times, when religion became dominant, well, religion was brought in as a governing force for 1 century, 2 centuries, 3 centuries. Afterwards, religion went out, and something else comes in. You will see that in the growth if you study history. Religion is not allowed to be dominant. India is the country in which you find from the very beginning this domination of spiritual value as a highest value of not only individual, collective life. It is right from the Veda, right up to now. Even in the epics, the emperors had no greater power than the spiritual man. The spiritual man always gave him guidance. He had the vision of truth, and he knew what was good for society. So he told the king what he must do in order to reign well, or reign as a successful monarch. To do good to the collectivity, it was the business of the rishi to know. So that the dominance of spiritual value in formation of collective life, in all countries there was at one time religious and spiritual basis. But most of the collectivities lost it in the process of growth. India retained that basis right up to now, and therefore, if an experiment is to be judged, then one can say that yes, it can last and create a collectivity which is powerful enough with a number of multiple groups living together, because India is not in that sense one nation or one people. India is composed of several races, you see, speaking about 14 languages. But the spiritual value that dominates all of them and each of them, well, keeps them together. What keeps India together is not its political constitution, which came only yesterday. The unity of India historically was only twice attained on a large scale. One was in the time of, pre-modern time, means Ashoka's time was one. But the second time was Akbar's time. And third time was the British time, you see, a political unity. But that did not affect the cultural, the inner core of Indian life. Even if North India was ruled by, say, Ashoka, and South India was not brought into the realm of Ashoka, the spiritual values in the South were the same as they were in the North. So it is that spiritual value and its effort to bring it into life more and more, that is really the basic unity of Indian spirit. When you say India, what does India stand for in the group life? You see, each group stands for some value, is it not? It is the projection of the cosmic Purusha, the cosmic being. Now, what does India stand for? Well, India stands for maintenance of spiritual values in collective life. That is the Bharat Shakti, they will call it, the power of India. India as an entity, collective entity, has worked through course of history the insistence on maintenance of spiritual values in individual and collective life. And she has risked, historically, taken up great risks in order to maintain this. She has gone through other nations. Whenever it came to actual trial, they said, no, let us put religion on the shelf or spirituality on the shelf, and let us deal on the basis of, force or power or organization or whatever is available. But India had the foresight to try this, because it was felt that this was one of the strongest bases for maintaining collective life. Collective life must have a spiritual basis. And spiritual basis being given, it must be dynamic. Well, that is one aspect of this. Two different groups organize on insisting or overweighing two values, politico-economical and religious-social or social-religious. You see, evolution of the two groups in two continents, gives us the two strands of culture, of collective life. And there you find difference in the values, you see. Immediately you will find difference in the values, that in the West, individuality, rationality, collective life, power comes on the top. On the Eastern side, sympathy, tolerance, understanding, idleness, you see, want of organization, want of free thinking, want of rationality, all that in the Eastern side. Weakness and strength, you see, just as the weakness and strength comes on the Western side. The same thing, they have got a basis which is strong and they have got elements which are weak. Now, the same that happened to Europe. Europe was not conscious of its weakness because she was too conscious of power. That power alone was enough in the Western mind to make it think that everything must be all right because you have power. Well, it is now, after 2 world wars, it was discovered that power can be, a problem. Power can pose then and create difficulties which are not easy to solve. So the East also had to find out that merely spiritual value, unless you apply dynamically in life, will lead you only to idleness and to want of organization. You must make yourself felt. If you want to make spiritual values live, you must live them and live by them. If you simply profess and have that we have high values, it is of no value to life. Life doesn't care for it. You must live it, then the thing becomes living. Well, their idleness and their want of independent thinking, their want of organizing collective life, Well, they had to pay by losing their independence and learning under slavery how to organize collective life and to feel oneness of the whole rather than each individual trying to solve his problem. And that was a one small, one defect of Buddhistic outlook which infected India with that political weakness. Because Buddha gave this idea that individuality doesn't exist, you see. There is no individual. Its individual is a flux. All the time consciousness is only flowing. And the problem is how to get out of this flux. And each one has to make his own effort. That is the way. So the drive towards collective, which we find in the Veda, for instance, Samgachadvam, Samvadadvam, let us speak together, think together, let our minds work together. That was lost because each has to solve his own problem. And then naturally the cohesion of collective life was lost. And well, that India has to relearn, and I think it has not yet fully learned that lesson, you see. Well, that is where it is. Now, we are only trying to see the operation of a collective consciousness in formation of group life here, and the movement has been not only in point of size and politics, small groups increasing in size and giving rise to political and economic constitutions. That is not the only growth, but side by side, psychological, moral and spiritual values have been also tried in collective life, so that the growth is double-fanged or two-faced. One is the size and politics, another is culture and spirituality. You see, spiritual. Well, that two lines we have to follow. I think we must wait for next time to see how this growth has taken place. Well, we'll take up the detail of this study on political basis and on cultural basis in 2 or 3 or 4 sittings, I think. It will take 2 or 3 or 4 sittings. I don't know how many.
Purani, two-face politics and what?
Culture.
Culture.
One side is organizational of life, and another is embodiment of values of life in it, you see.
I was of the being. Are you speaking of a manifested being also? Are you speaking of a manifested being also?
Yes, it is manifesting through the collectivity only. It can't manifest, it is not able to manifest its deepest soul, the highest spiritual entity, because man is imperfect. As in the individual, the psychic is not able to come to the front easily unless he makes sadhana or makes a conscious effort. What manifests in the individual is his mind, or his desires, or his vital being, or his emotions. And psychic as much as, well, it is allowed to. But the same in collective life. Collective life till yesterday moved round vital interest and gathering of political power. So the collectivity was moved round, or was moving round the vitality, desire soul of the collective man. And because it was wide and large, therefore it was like a titan. There are stories, symbolic stories in India, which illustrate this point, that when a titan becomes very powerful, then he withdraws all the power of, of tyrannizing over the world into himself. Now that is not one man, really speaking, it is a collective. The collective consciousness, when works on a basis of desire or ambition or interest or economics, well, it amasses tremendous power. And then it can bring about a catastrophe on a far larger scale than an individual. It can succeed on a large scale, but fail also on a large scale. That is what Europe found out, and that's what we are going to go into. That Germany, in the last 40 years, committed the mistake of mistaking her vital soul for her soul, her vital being for her soul. And she said, this is the soul. In fact, Nietzsche and those people told them like that. Will to live and will to power is the central drive of whole individual and collective life. Now this is vital being, quite, there is nothing wrong in it, but to say that this is the soul was to commit a very great fundamental mistake. And because this mistake was committed and pursued, it brought difficulties and ruin on a much larger scale because it is powerful. This is like a giant, like a titan, you see, and throwing things into world forces to dominate the world. You see, with this vital drive to will to power and will to live. Well, there is the accumulation of power like that becomes tremendously destructive, and if it is not allowed, if it is not opposed, it can dominate certainly and stop what you call light for 500 years or 1000 years. Sure, if you allow it to dominate, if you don't organize forces of light against it, not merely desire to will to power, but some sort of will to light and will to perfection. You see, some sort of will to be human. You see, some will you must put against it. If you can't put any dynamic opposition to it, it will dominate, and it is like a steamroller. It would be a tremendous steamroller. Yes.
That was manifested in person and centered in manifestation in one person.
Yes. Yes.
That's what I meant.
Yes.
Is collective life manifested, the soul of collective being manifested in one person.
No, that was not being, but something that masqueraded as the being.
The collective being will not manifest in one.
No, it was not the collective. You see, the mistake of the collectivity was manifested in one, you can say. The whole German outlook had been working to this for last 30 or 40 years. That, you see, war is not a result of mechanical forces, but subjective forces. It is a realization of subjective, move. They said that we are the best people in the world. We are the leaders of humanity. And because we are most intelligent, most organized, hardworking, capable of research, capable of, many things. Now, that vital conviction, which they mistook for the German soul, was embodied in Hitler. Yes, but not the German soul. German soul is far deeper and higher and more profound, because two great things Germany has, which I think very few nations have: the capacity to create real music and philosophy. But the real soul of Germany is there, with a great power to do hard work, certainly applied to life, dictation in collective life. I mean, the state power was first organized in Germany. Socialism really springs from Germany as a political institution. It is they who showed that the state is everything. And these great elements of German culture, well, they were completely thrown on one side. It is now that perhaps under the stress of this difficulty and the suffering through which they passed is making them now to seek, and I think they will find. They will have to find their own soul. It's a great soul. Nation. Great nation. Germany is a powerful nation.
Well, I was getting at more or less the relationship of the mother, the embodied soul. As you say, Mother India, I just came to me, there would be a Mother America and a Mother Germany.
Yes, we can put.
Is there an embodied Mother America?
We can put like that if you
That's
want.
what I want.
Either an entity, yes, certainly. But England would put itself like that lion, is it not? Just see the symbols which they have evolved in their national life also are indicative of their attitude. You see, not their soul yet, but some attitude of what they feel, the collective force. They feel their power, lion, another is eagle, third is bear. Isn't it that?
Power, I thought you said England great and Germany powerful.
Yes, it's much more.
New Testament, the story of Balaam. And how the prophecy was given to him. A soul of the Canaanites were coming into the valley.
Who are coming?
The Canaanites were coming into the valley, and this horde of new people were coming in, and this man wanted Balaam, who was a seer, to curse them, you see, put a curse on them, so that they would die of disease or whatnot, and never gain any hold. So he sent his, with offerings of gold, he sent his emissaries to Balaam, and he said, "Arise now and come to me and offer sacrifice and curse these people." And Balaam was stopped in the way by an angel who the ass saw the angel. He was going between two rocks. He saw this angel and he fell down, and Balak fell down with him. And Balak hit his ass with a stick and cursed him. And the ass began to speak. And it said, "Why do you hit me? I am not at fault." And the angel appeared to Balak and told him that he was not to curse the Israelites, that he was to bless them. So Balak came before this wealthy and powerful ruler, and he said, "I cannot curse these Canaanites. I will have to bless them," which gave a great deal of no souls at all to this ruler. But he said, "They shall rise up as a young lion." And he said, "My eyes shall behold a country that is very far off." And he had this vision of a young lion rising in its power and the soul of this nation and destiny of these people that has not yet gained its true soul, the Israelites.
No, they have their state now, no?
Yes, but they are gaining it back again.
Yeah, they have now their state, and the difficulty for the neighbors are saying that they are creating trouble for them. But that I don't know whether the neighbors are right. They have turned a desert into a wonderful country. That must be said to their credit, because a wonderful organization, wonderful organization. It was all sand, before they went. And they paid fabulous prices to the Arabs for buying the land, and then brought water, and my God, what work they done. A friend of mine has visited. I haven't been there, but a friend of mine was telling me it is unbelievable unless you see. They brought money, and how they created water in a country where there was not a drop of water, and turned it into, fruit gardens and so on.
Pardon me, I said, "Mine eyes shall behold the king and his beauty and the land that is very far off." And he probably could see in his vision even 2,000 to 3,000 years beyond, you see. And the soul of these people would not be destroyed, no matter what they had to go through.
And like you said, the soul can never be destroyed.
Yes. Once a nation has reached, even political freedom is not necessary for the soul to survive or to live. It lives on, even when there is no political freedom. The Marathas in Indian history, for instance, they were a nation, and they won their freedom afterwards. They were not free when they were a nation, you see. So freedom is not necessarily a sign of nationhood. Nation may be existing, nation soul may be active and existing, even when there is no political freedom. This happens very often. In fact, he points out Russia, England, Germany, Spain, Italy, each were under foreign domination once upon a time. Each. Germany was under Napoleonic domination. Spain was also conquered. So was Italy, and so was England under Romans and France. Is it not? Yes, so that didn't prevent their coming to the nationhood. Can be a temporary. Huh?
Maybe it helped it even, the resistance, the opposition. Monster, is that the same reference as the thousand-petaled, the other opposite aspect of the thousand-petaled lotus? Or the thousand-headed serpent?
The thousand-headed god of which it speaks is only symbol of saying collective life. And that collective life can submit to the subconscious impulse, and then it becomes thousand-headed monster. The collective life, you take a group or a crowd, you see. Now crowd is on strike and 5 or 10,000 strikers are going out in procession or in a crowd shouting, and somebody gives a slogan. Now nobody thinks seriously of any program, nothing, it is simply a amorphous crowd with one impulse, you see. Now if somebody says, break that house or destroy or burn, well, they will all burn. Now that is a 1,000-headed monster, that it doesn't think.
So I'm thinking in reference to the chakras of your body, the 1,000 petal lotus. Was that any reference to?
No, no, no. This is a 1,000-headed monster, is a crowd. Shakespeare refers to the crowd that was unmanageable, you see.
Yeah.
Madness, you see, it can do in its frenzy anything.
That just turn the other way around when you see the 1,000-armed goddess, Shiva, inside spiritual.
Yes, that is so. That the divine has many avenues of power available to it. Yeah, that is one interpretation. And when we say 1,000-headed, it means collectivity.
What would you consider to be the soul of America?
Something that is embodied in.
Is it the oneness in the many? I mean, democracy, family.
Not only that, no. It is first of all assertion of individual freedom of belief. Freedom of individual belief. Freedom of man to believe, you see. That is one most important thing. And then that right extended to all.
And then India.
That right is extended to all, you see. That is one great point about America. That she is prepared to, first of all, assert a right to believe. And then she is prepared to give that right to other people.
And the soul of India would be the pearl of great price. I mean, it would be the spiritual.
Yes, spiritual seeking of the truth and living the truth. So typically American in that spirit, you see. There's something fundamentally about America, that freedom of the pilgrim fathers who came, you see. The capacity to risk everything to believe what one, you see. It is a risk. It is not that they knew that they will have, all conveniences here, and there was no convenience when they came. You must know they passed through a lot of difficulty. But to risk everything for one's belief, you see. And then you claim right to believe, well, you must give somebody else a right to believe what he wants to believe. Several other things also which came in the wake of formation of American states, which is an openness to new ideas, you see. An openness to new ideas, as the country was open to newcomers, also it had to open itself to new ideas. It is not conventional. America is not conventional.
No.
Yes, that's it. Those people say it is young, you see, but that is a wrong way of putting it. It is openness to new ideas, really speaking.
It's the melting pot, really, of the world, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, in one sense. Many strands have come together here, and now here they are finding, and therefore there is a mutual openness to new ideas. What it might lack is a steady application. It might lack a steady application, but the openness is still there, and that is a great promise. You see, when in Europe, you don't know, you go against a wall all the time. Absolutely wall. And you go and try. No. England, my goodness, it is fort of conservatism. Not conservatism political, I am talking of cultural conservatism. Tremendous conservatism. They can't change because they don't want to change. They don't believe in change. That's why America has outstripped them in science and other things, because they don't want to change. So now they are finding that they are, lacking back, but still There's psychological difficulty. Even if they want to change, they find it difficult to change. They have established values. English way of life, the best way in the world.
Yes.
Oh my God, you promise. English way of life, the last word in life. They say, when you go there, you realize.
C.H. Lawrence has a poem that says, we are superior people. C.H. Lawrence, there's a poem in a little book called Pansies. Says, we are superior people.
Yes. That Englishman never forgets. Here only is the English way of life. And some of the foreigners who come there are impressed by it also, I must say. And so they think, oh, English way of life. And some of the Americans think like that England is something wonderful. That's why some of the Americans, want to marry some English lord who is nowhere in England, but still, because he's a lord, this old conservative idea is there. England is establishing. It is going away in America, but it was once upon a time, and I think in some American minds it is still there because of connection with Anglo-Saxon, origin first.
But that would be a lord anywhere. Italian lord would be that's handy.
English spirit is there. Some fundamental aspect of English spirit has transmigrated here. There is no doubt about it. This freedom and its, this obstinacy of maintaining freedom, and so that is from England. And that's quite true. And in the war, it helped a lot, the bringing about the two together. Churchill could come here and stay that I'm half American, you see. It's a language, common language. And some common ideas, I don't say all, because England is living in her own ideas. I don't think all the ideas are here accepted. But the language is still there.
I noticed that the English people that would come out to Canada, we talked to them. And of course, we asked them how England was, how the royal family was. But the first question, how's the royal family? And they say, oh, they're getting along all right. It's as if they were nothing any more than the average family around anywhere in the world. And they'd be out 1 or 2 years in Canada, and they'd say, well, no, don't you want to go back to the old country? No, we don't want to go back to the old country, except to visit. And if they did go back, they wouldn't be happy.
No.
Because they couldn't live in that old traditional town.
Not only that, life in England is very, very difficult, very costly. Life in England is hard, because she has to make up the loss of industry during wartime, and she had lost time also in research and so on. So she's very hard up. The aristocracy and the common man is gone. Absolutely gone. The lords are now only, showing their house for 10 shillings to visitors and taking money to maintain the house. They can't have servants. Lord Irwin, the Viceroy of India, sold his house, his big manor, with a very big garden, to Leeds municipality and gave it over. So sold it away, because the death duty will make him pauper, you see, he will be insolvent. He's paying death duty, then maintenance means gardener and servant and so on, he will have nothing. So that's what the aristocracy is gone that way. And except as a status, it will maintain somewhere here and there, but
Do they still have quite a class system, quite a class difference in England?
the difference is there, but now that much of it is wiped out, you see. The lords have come to the common level very much. Probably to bring spirituality here. No, that is when we are putting it. I mean, I don't want to make it categorical, that's all.
They feel so unfit anywhere. There's no one really.
Yes, that's one more necessary to to bring it here. There are Indians, there are Europeans who are born in India. Just because India requires something which they must do to India, you see. Like Nehru.
This is all of it.
Must live and create here. It's an asset for whole humanity. And if such a spiritual change is to come, then people who are born in that culture, living in that atmosphere, they who must embody it and give a form. An Indian form will not suit. Outer form, you see. India may have her own form, which is quite all right and natural for her. And even that Indian form is not traditional in India, so far as Hindu's yoga is concerned. It is absolutely, they will say quite out of the way, and they say this is not even yoga, they will say. But a new form. Well, perhaps a form here might have some lines of that form, bases of that form. But the organization might take a different form. It's necessary to.
It's very advanced beyond all the other realms we ever been.
Can organize here. Already, that's because human unity is already there. As I told several times, that world is already one. And there will be many who will feel it like that when they grow now, younger generation. They are bound to feel not at all that limitation, which the last generation or two generations back was a very active factor of feeling I am so and so and I belong to this and so on. One belongs to the world.
There was someone, I think, in France sometime back who was trying to force the government to give him an international passport. And I think he got it, didn't he? He got it. So the first beginning of an international passport. International citizen he was.
I like that.
They would arrange the tax pattern together. There we go, thinking of taxes already. International tax.